A woman accused of orchestrating her husband's murder has appeared in courts with two of the people she allegedly hired for the hit in Ekurhuleni. Banele Skhosana was shot dead 2 months after paying lobola for Sibongile Dlamini, who was handcuffed just a day before her husband was buried. Skhosana was attacked by two gunmen earlier this month as he was opening his tuck shop in Guatema. Police approached the widow on Friday last week while she was sitting with elders on a mattress mourning her husband's death. Her matter will be back in courts on the 21st of February.
Now, the video you saw was a video of the remains of a police officer being conveyed to be laid to rest in South Africa. Now, you see there was a woman also crying. That was his wife. They were married for just 2 months, and this tragedy happened. I'm sure you are wondering what happened to this police officer that ended up taking his life. Well, preliminary investigation revealed that he was actually on sick leave. So he was off duty and he has this shop, and he decided to visit the shop and just take in some stock and fill up the shop and try to make good use of his time away from his police work so he can bring in some money for his family. Very honorable, right? Yeah, but then it turns out just as he opened the shop and he was about getting the stock into the shop, two men appeared from nowhere, pulled out their weapons, and then they unalived this police officer. It's very unfortunate. Now, this police officer is called Constable Banele Skhosana. Some also called him Chris Skhosana. So that was how Constable Banele Skhosana and his life got ended. He left behind the wife who was crying and a child. When I saw this case, my heart went to the family because, you know, it's not easy when a spouse loses their co-spouse, or when a child loses a parent, especially a child that young, like the kid they have. So it was more like you are commiserating with the family. But then, guess what? It turns out there's more to this case. Because investigations would move on and then later turn back to his wife, whom he had been married to for just 2 months prior to him being gunned down. And the investigations so far as at date is showing that the two men who accosted this police officer whilst he was off duty attending to his shop were actually hitmen that were hired by his wife to get the husband off the face of this earth. This is a wife he had married for just 2 months, and allegedly she did this to him. I'm saying allegedly because she's been arrested, the case is in court, she's been prosecuted, but a final verdict hasn't been given confirming that she's been found guilty. So in the eyes of the law, like we all know, she's actually innocent until proven guilty. But this case brings into sharp focus the increasing rate at which spouses seem to be putting hits on their fellow spouses. This is not something that is peculiar to one gender in marriage. This is not about women or men. It's about human beings. And it seems like more and more, the very foundation upon which marriage is supposed to stand is actually shaky and failing, because in this case, Constable Banele Skhosana got married to his wife on the 30th of November 2024. And just 2 months after this has happened. And if the allegations turn out to be true, imagine how dark it would be that a wife he was married to for just 2 months was able to put a hit out on him and actually get him off the face of this earth. But I'm going to break down the story further because there is more to it. The hit was the final straw after an alleged failed attempt she orchestrated herself. So, just months after their traditional wedding, this police officer, Constable Banele Skusana, was on the high, getting married to a girlfriend he had dated for 2 years. He was on the high. But little did he know that he was in for something else, because it turns out that this girlfriend of his, who had now become his wife, was actually physically abusing this police officer. Now, the lady's name is Sibongile Dlamini, and it's been alleged that she was actually physically abusing her husband. So, I know in these day and times, when you hear domestic violence or physical abuse, most people naturally graduate in thinking that it's being perpetrated by a man or a male against a female. That seems more like the likely thing that would happen when you hear domestic violence. But then, in this particular case, it turns out that it was the other way around, where this woman was doing this to this guy. And I think that it's very likely Skusana, the husband, was a very, very solid gentleman, because he's a police officer. At the very least, I'm sure he knows how to defend himself. So if this allegation is true and is actually concrete that the wife was doing this to him and he was restraining himself to that point, I think that it speaks a lot of the kind of person he was. And he actually never reported it officially. It's alleged that he told his sister because they were seeing bite marks and scratches all over him. But then he told them that he wouldn't report because he wanted to stay silent to protect his career. Now, they were renting an apartment, and his sister is indicating that she used to get complaints that her brother's wife was constantly being physical with him and fighting him. Now, most often you wouldn't see women doing this. The few women who do this, most often they have anger issues. And when the man is very calm, they seem to want to ride him and overpower him and dominate him to the point of being physically violent towards him. If these allegations are true, then it's very likely that Constable Banele Skusana's wife, Sibongile Dlamini, was probably one of such women. And this is the allegation that is out there, that she was really manhandling, or maybe I should say woman-handling. Okay, well, manhandling her husband. To the point that they are saying there were times she would even break windows and damage the working uniform of her husband out of her rage. Now, like I told you, they got married on the 30th of November 2024 after they had been dating for 2 years. But it will turn out that their marriage would last just about 2 months before this woman would actually move from her marital home with a new boyfriend. So it goes to show the character of this person. If this is true, how can you be married and just barely almost 2 months into it, you've moved out of your marital home to stay with a boyfriend? Now, she would return some few days later and try to fix things with the now deceased husband of hers. And when she came back, she realized that this husband of hers had actually moved on. He had moved on. And this allegedly did not sit well with her. But she played it cool. And then she decided that she was going to serve him some food. She was just playing smart, sneaky, loving, and romantic with him, just to let his guard down so she could get at him. Now, it's alleged that she gave him this food and then she laced it with some poisonous substance. This is an account coming from the sister of the deceased husband. And she's saying that her brother fell very sick, and when her brother described the symptoms he was going through to her, she is a nurse and she knew that there was a very strong possibility that her brother had been poisoned with organophosphate. Well, so far, this has not medically been proven yet. But guess what? This situation is alleged that this situation is what actually led to the police officer being on leave, recuperating, at which point this estranged wife of his, Dlamini, allegedly suggested to her husband, whom she has already cheated on and is being violent towards, she suggested to him whilst he was recuperating from what she had tried to do allegedly, she suggested to him that he should buy stock for their shop located near their home. And bear in mind, this is the same shop he will end up being killed at. So security cameras actually caught the moment these two men would end up ambushing Banele and gunning him down outside the shop. And in the footage, you would see that they were actually waiting for him outside the shop. So the moment Banele's Kusana came to the shop, they just pounced on him and gunned him down. This was as recent as the 5th of February 2025. So like I told you, this is a case that is still unraveling. It's in court actually. Now, sources are also saying that the police officer's wife has actually been married before. It turns out she had a first marriage, and that the husband of hers in that first marriage also died of poisoning. You see where the trend is going. Now, you may be wondering, how did the investigation actually turn on to come back to arrest this woman? God being so good, it's been reported that after the two men gunned down Banele, the police officer, the police mounted an intensive search for them, and eventually they caught one of them and the other escaped. Now the one that was caught snitched and told them that it was Constable Banele's Kusane's wife who actually put out the hit on him. Now this is where it gets murky, because with all these stories that are out there about this woman, until they are confirmed and she's found guilty of all of them, it's just allegations. Like I said, she's still innocent until proven guilty. Now, the word of this assassin is valuable in this case, but I don't think it will be absolute for a conviction, because at the end of the day, it's going to be his word against her word. She's already denying that in court, and she's saying it's likely it could be another rival group in the business industry who are trying to set an example and scare people off the industry. So per this, she's already denying that she had any involvement in the assassination of her husband. So it's going to be a he said, she said thing, where it's her word versus that of the assassin. So it comes down to proof. The prosecution, the police, in their investigation would have to be able to get substantial evidence that ties the hitman to this wife. Else, there's a very strong possibility she will beat the case. I'm not in a position to pass judgment because, like I said, it comes down to evidence. But being someone who has covered almost 500 true crime cases, I have seen several things that tell me that this could be a possibility. There are spouses who have done this. Some are female, some are male. But that does not also mean that she did this. I'm just saying it's possible. And as usual, I'll be following the case as and when there are updates. I'm going to bring it to you. But if it turns out that she's guilty, I'll be very surprised. Or maybe I wouldn't, because if you look at how she was crying at the beginning of this video, most people would believe that she was genuinely sad for the passing of her husband. So if it turns out that she was the same person who orchestrated and executed it and paid for it, sometimes you just can't understand how the mind and heart of some people work. But that is the world we live in. Most people are not who they say they are or what they pretend to be. Keep an eye out. I always say this. Keep your head on a swivel. It doesn't matter who you are dealing with. Stay safe. Be a bit paranoid if you have to. If some people say, oh, you are paranoid, just be careful. There's a saying that a little bit of paranoia keeps you safe and secured. I'll catch you on the next one. Stay safe out there.